Follow my land. You're finished. Bring everything you've got. Keep pushing. Go ahead. You will not take what's mine. I won't claim my actions were justified, but these people crossed a boundary so blatant it might as well have been carved in stone by fools intoxicated on power. I told them, more than once, to leave me be. Still, Karen and the whole HOA board treated my patience as fragility, mistaking quiet for surrender, wearing authority like a heavy perfume. I'd been managing this farm since my father passed, learning the ground, the weather, and lost the hard way, trying to turn sorrow into something worth growing. I sold crops, mended fences, paid what I owed, kept to myself, and somehow that quiet life offended people hooked on dominance. My property bordered their manicured neighborhood, rows of matching rooftops and hollow smiles. Karen despised that my fields refused to obey her rulebook. She ran the HOA like a queen, a woman fluent in bylaws and veiled threats, who only grinned when others squirmed. In her eyes, my tractors were an eyesore. My animals stank. My self-sufficiency was an insult. At first I brushed it off, figuring boredom bred pettiness, but cruelty was her calling. Every week brought a fresh complaint, another letter, another fine invented from nothing. Then one morning, an envelope arrived that made my hands tremble. It announced the HOA's plan to erect a sprawling luxury resort on my land and that I'd be removed to make it happen. Removed, as if I were merely borrowing soil from her private empire. They dressed robbery in courteous phrasing, pretending paperwork and ink could wipe out generations. This wasn't a proposal, it was an order. They wanted my land for cheap, fast, and without a fight. There was no chance I'd agree. That farm carried my father's fingerprints in every fence post and furrow. Giving it up would mean admitting that organized bullies always win. I chose to answer clearly, calmly, in writing, so no one could twist my meaning later. I had no idea that plain honesty would flip something in them, turning irritation into fixation. Tell us in the comments which country or city you're watching from. We're curious how far this story reaches. I replied that same day, courteous but unwavering, informing the board I wasn't selling. Not now, not ever, not for any sum dressed up in false authority. I braced for posturing, maybe another threat disguised as legal talk, but Karen's response snapped instantly. She turned up at my gate days later, heels sinking into soil she clearly loathed, staring me down with a smile that never touched her eyes. She said, slow and deliberate, that the board would do whatever it took to seize that land, and that cooperation would spare me a lot of regret. From then on, it grew personal. Letters came weekly, then daily, marked with legal seals meant to frighten. They boasted about powerful lawyers, murmured about eminent domain, hinted that defiance would cost far more than giving in. I disregarded everyone, because bullies unravel when silence won't bend to them. That only fed their fury. The next letter changed the game entirely. No courtesy, no legal padding, just a countdown. 7 days to sell, or face removal. That word lingered like a bruise. Removal of what exactly they never clarified. But the threat burrowed under my skin regardless. That's when I realized this had stopped being a land dispute. I called my lawyer and walked him through every letter, every visit, every hidden threat. His tone hardened as I talked, and he told me to record everything without delay. I set up cameras across the property, reinforced the gates, bolted doors I'd never bothered locking before. Self-reliance feels different once you have to fight to keep it. Nights grew heavier. Every noise stretched taut with suspicion. Unfamiliar men started lingering near my fence line, claiming to be lost, staring too long, asking questions that made no sense. One wore a hoodie despite the summer heat. Another traced the edges of my property with his eyes like he was sizing it up. They'd vanish the moment I confronted them, always composed, always grinning. That unsettled me far more than yelling ever could. Karen went completely silent after that, which felt worse, like the stillness before a storm that wouldn't care who it destroyed. Evening fell hard after a punishing day, the kind where tiredness feels earned but brings no peace. Asuk sat down, boots still laced, when my phone lit up with a camera alert. Movement near the cabin. Then another alert followed. I opened the feed and my chest tightened. 3 strangers, moving with purpose, not curiosity. One carried something long, wrapped in fabric. Another gripped an axe like he'd used one before. This wasn't trespassing. This was intent. I didn't freeze. Freezing wastes time. I grabbed my shotgun, hands steady from years spent hunting, and left the front door unlocked on purpose. Then I slipped out through the back, circling wide through shadows I knew better than daylight itself. My pulse pounded, not from fear, but rage. They'd crossed from threat into action, and that changes everything fast. I dialed the police quietly. gave my address, and murmured exactly what I was seeing. They stormed into the cabin like they already owned it. Heavy boots, muffled voices, laughing about something trivial. I fired a warning shot into the wall from outside, the blast tearing through the night air. Chaos erupted immediately. They stumbled out, cursing, tangling over each other, scanning a darkness they couldn't make sense of. One swung his gun around wildly. I fired again, kicking up dirt near his boots, sending him scrambling backward. That's when they spotted me, a shape against the porch light. One man lost his nerve and charged, axe raised in a decision he'd already made too late. I aimed and fired, halting him instantly. He crumpled, shock frozen across his face. Another tried to return fire, hands trembling, hitting nothing at all. I fired once more, and he dropped hard, screaming rather than fighting back. Sirens sliced through the chaos moments later, blue light sweeping the fields like a verdict. The remaining men threw down their weapons and hit the dirt, sobbing, pleading, suddenly eager to cooperate. I stood there, breathing heavy, watching officers flood my land, aware that something irreversible had just been unleashed, whether I'd wanted it or not. By sunrise, the farm no longer felt mine entirely. Police tape stretched along the fences while deputies logged weapons, footprints, shell casings, and shattered plans. The interrogations cracked fast. Within 48 hours, signed confessions pointed to Karen as the mastermind and funder, with 3 board members admitting to approving the payments and planning. Charges piled up quickly. Sentencing came months later, clean and unforgiving. Karen was found guilty of conspiracy to commit murder, solicitation of murder, mail fraud, and racketeering. The judge handed down 38 years flat in state prison, with no parole consideration until year 30. She was ordered to pay $4,300,000 in restitution, covering my legal fees, property damage, emotional trauma, and the cost of the investigation. Her assets were confiscated, her HOA title reduced to a disgraced footnote. The board members didn't fare much better. 2 who rejected plea bargains were given 22 years each, required to serve mandatory minimums before any parole hearing at year 17. Restitution for them totaled $1 million apiece. One member cooperated early, testified in full, and received 9 years, serving 7 years and 3 months before release under supervision, still owing $600,000. The surviving shooter was sentenced to 32 years for attempted murder, armed home invasion, and conspiracy. He must serve 27 years before eligibility, plus $280,000 in restitution. The last accomplice accepted a plea deal, drawing 16 years, serving 13, and paying $90,000. The man who died became the decisive factor in Karen's case, an aggravating detail the court returned to again and again. When the verdicts were read aloud, the courtroom fell completely silent. No speeches, no justifications, just numbers that consume futures whole. The HOA was dissolved under state supervision. The resort plans disappeared entirely. I replanted my fields, rebuilt the fences, and reclaimed mornings that were finally mine again. Power finally collided with consequence, and consequence didn't flinch. Justice outlasted the headlines, carved permanently into public record, ruined reputations, and an empty boardroom no one ever dared to fill again. No appeals, no mercy. The end.